I mean, it's like you just, we're letting thieves, base thieves run the world. It's insane. Anybody who believes in that movement right now, honestly, with this guy running it, is blind, stupid, or deaf, or all of three. It doesn't make sense to me. Take VAT up to 15 by 1.5%. What are you doing, man? And I like to think they are being run by an evil force, and one day they'll wake up and rebel against it. Because it's too difficult for me to think that the ANC is actually doing that to its own people.
Hello and welcome to the Media Court. My name is Christopher Chwani. Today, we've got a very special guest today, legendary Eric Miyeni. Good afternoon, welcome to the Media Court.
Thanks, sir. Thank you.
How have you been?
I've been good. Yeah, it's been good being on the sidelines watching things, you know. I've been very well, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. For someone that doesn't know you, can you just tell us briefly about yourself, your upbringing? You know, you're from Soweto, but tell us more about who Eric Miyeni is.
I mean, I don't know how I got that, but what's always driven me somehow that I find very difficult to watch is unfairness, you know, of any kind. That drives me, I think. And I think that comes mainly from my mother. My dad was present, very strong, a quiet man, a very creative man. But he passed away when I was 12, you know, and there are 4 of us boys. My brother was 10 at the time. My third brother, the second brother was 6 at the time. Or was it 6? No, 4. And the youngest one was 3. So a woman brought up 4 men from between the ages of 12 and 3 on her own. So to a large degree, I can say that I got that sense of justice in that house. You never got a whipping without a court of law of some kind, where you had to explain your case, and you rarely won it because no case came up if by any chance you had done nothing wrong. I grew up in Soweto, in Meadowlands, in Zone 5. My earliest memories of that, of walking to school, you know, which had tons of fun to it, obviously had some of its danger to it. It's of playing soccer in the streets, you know, barefoot, and making sure that, you know, it didn't get dark so that you got in the house, you know, before it was dark. But sometimes the game is still on and it's beautiful and you still want to see who's going to win. But you got to leave because you don't want to get that whipping, because the rule was get home before sunset. The rest, I guess, stems from that in terms of who I am. Whether I'm writing, acting, or broadcasting, anything or any of the things you've listed, it comes from a very deep sense of justice. I really don't like it when people are not treated right.
Interesting. So you grew up in Soweto. At the time, what was Soweto like?
Soweto was no tarred roads, except some odd spaces. I don't remember having a tarred road. There might have been one in the odd space, but like it was just gravel roads back then. Street lights came a lot later. Even then it was in certain spaces. So it was a very dark place, literally at night. It was quite a dangerous place because you can imagine it's a whole lot of people with very little pushed into one area and constantly harassed, whether you're on the train, whether you're at work, wherever you are. If you are black under apartheid, you are under constant harassment. So you have to take it out somewhere. Yeah. So people would drink. There would be some crazy fights. There was a time when I thought I watched a stabbing virtually every weekend, or heard of one. If you didn't see one, you heard of one. At the same time, Soweto was a place of incredible camaraderie. I mean, we played on the street. We knew all the kids down the whole road. It was a place of great music. Come weekend, as you walk down the road, you hear different songs from different houses. I guess now in the suburbs would call it loud, but back then, even now, I think for me, it's a very beautiful memory. Yeah, I mean, it was when I was growing up, the Jomo Sonos were the best, as young players. So, but we didn't go to the stadium, so we listened to that on the radio. The radio was a very big part of my growing up. You listened to soccer on it, you listened to radio plays on it, you had the news on it, it was your whole television, even though, television came in 1976, of course, everybody knows that. But in 76, I was 10. So my growing up days, there was no television, so radio was everything. I mean, I mostly remember good things about my growing up. I somehow managed to have a household that gave me enough, I think, more than anything, integrity to navigate the space. I mean, some people would say, you come from a certain family, you learn to fight because you're in a fighting kind of neighborhood, maybe. Some people say, well, you escape, so you drink or you take drugs because you're in a crazy space. But I think what I got out of my family space, where there wasn't that much money, but there wasn't too little either, you ate every day, is a sense of walking with some kind of integrity and dignity and a lot of respect for other people. So that's how I navigated the space. I was quite well liked. I didn't get into that many fights. I mean, I had one best friend that we fought a lot. It was just me and him. Today we're fighting, tomorrow we're fine. But other than that, that's how I navigated. I kind of came out like that. My younger brother, on the other hand, I think if we hadn't left Soweto at the time that my mother took us to the rural areas, he might be dead or in jail now because he was navigating it differently to what I was doing. As you well know, you can have the same family, same environment. You don't necessarily come out the same. But in the end, it worked out that we all sort of did okay, despite the fact that we had a single parent throughout our lives. My mother never remarried. So,
You mentioned justice. You also mentioned that you were 10 years in 1996. And we all know what happened in 1996.
76. Yeah.
Would you say that contributed massively towards you studying law?
I would like to say that, but it didn't, actually. I studied law because I saw Al Pacino in a movie called And Justice for All, and
The movie inspired you.
the movie, yeah. And when I saw that movie, and back in my day, by the way, if we were sort of one of the more intelligent students, which I wasn't that dumb in school, you either had to be a doctor or a lawyer. And I still can't stand blood, so I could never even think about being a doctor. But I could have been a psychologist, I could have gone to engineering, but back then we didn't even know those careers existed. So when I had the choice between medicine and law, it was obvious. I liked what Al Pacino was doing in that courtroom, and I thought, this I can do, this will be good. So I studied law. It's a very strange thing because I think I came to that sense of how much justice means to me as I grew, like even at varsity. I remember a very good friend of mine, Paul, for purposes of this, I'll tell you that he is a white guy. And I remember him coming to a meeting where we, black students, were sort of having a meeting of some kind. But clearly, he was interested in those politics. He was progressive. And he wanted to speak. He reminded me of this. I didn't remember the story. And he was shut down a lot. You know, no one wanted him to speak. And I got up and I said, what kind of world are we looking to have? You know, like what kind of... And if we are saying that we are fighting for a non-racial South Africa, then should we be not practicing now to listen to other people? I mean, even if he says something messed up, then we get to know he's messed up or see what he represents, but maybe contribute something else. But I don't understand how we can talk about a country where everybody's free and we practice discrimination now. And for me, it was theoretical. I wasn't busy with him. I didn't know him that well to begin with. But I just felt like something was unjust about it. Now, at the same time, back then, I remember us sort of planning to go on strike because the black society, it was called a Black Something Society, was given money by the university that we felt was not enough. I said, okay, we can go on toi, that's okay. But how do you get funding to liberate yourself from your oppressor? How do you get your oppressor to fund your own liberation? If I take money from my oppressor to liberate myself, I'm still a slave. I don't think that protest took place. But this is how I think. This is who I am. I'm not busy with you because you're black or busy with you because you're white. But I have a very good sense, I believe, of seeing what's just, what's the right thing in this moment. That doesn't mean I'm always right. Obviously, everybody makes mistakes. But at the very least, you will get what I believe at the time, and it'll be honest. And it'll be coming from a sense of justice as I see it at that time. And if I have to wake up tomorrow and say, sorry, I made a mistake, I shouldn't have said that, then I'll say exactly that. I'll say, I did not get that properly. Yeah, so no, I did not study law out of that, but when I was in it, it made sense. And at the same time, guess what? What I was going to practice, what I found interesting was criminal law. And even then, it wasn't because I thought, oh, there are a lot of black people who are being criminalized, and I didn't. It's just an area of law that interested me. I found it interesting, you know. So they are not exactly meshed together, but they are not mutually exclusive. Because I don't think, in fact, those who study law properly and practice it will know that it is, at least as it has been designed by the Western powers, a big source of injustice. All you have to do is to look at the way they phrase things, the way they hide meaning, the way they, every contract you write, you almost always give away all your rights, So the tool of law is a tool, actually works for the rich, works for the moneyed. It has almost all the injustice you can think of written into it. If you look at it now, let's take, for example, there's aid blockade going into Palestine as an example. So what did the government of Israel do? They passed a law to say Israel does not have to follow international law, so it's legal for them to block aid. It's law. It's legal. So in Israel, it's legal to block aid and starve people to death. So what's the law then? So I think justice stems from a much deeper place, if I may say that, than your profession. You can do your best, I think, to practice law in a just manner. But you can also do your best to be a teacher who is just. You can do your very best to be a soccer player who is just. Justice comes from a much deeper place.
What is your view on disinformation and misinformation that we have seen over the past couple of years with regards to the 7th of October, what happened in Israel, and what is currently happening in Gaza, where young kids, women, the elder are being killed daily by Israel. And the world is watching, doing nothing.
You see, the media game, as played by Westerners, does not start on the day of the catastrophe, you know. By that time, it's too late. So there's been a lot of media output to say, first of all, to make Palestinians disappear into a bigger group that's called Arabs. So Arabs are dangerous. Arabs are violent. Arabs are terrorists. Arabs go and kill people in order to get virgins in heaven. Arabs are, that narrative started long ago. So you are being dehumanized on a daily basis. So that by the time I strike, everybody says, of course, it makes sense.
And to justify and legitimize.
And they start way before. It doesn't start on the day that they want to hit you. They started with China long ago. They've been saying the China economy is falling, it's failing. They are not saying it's failing. They know it's a lie, but they are preparing you for when they make it fail. You see, they're preparing for when they strike and it fails. They did that to Japan, you see. They prop you up, prop the country up, and then when it's really going very well, then they say there's a bubble coming, it looks like it's going to overheat, and then they come, they manipulate the markets, the thing tanks, they buy everything. Toyota is now owned 76% by American companies, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, BlackRock. They own 76% of a genuine Japanese company, and they run the economy. So what we are seeing in Palestine, in terms of the media, it's long been practiced, you see. When they were going to go to America, okay, they used the media to convince the poor amongst them, who are white like them, the great frontier where things are free, the land is wonderful. And people got on those boats. And inside those boats, there was no ventilation. They were dying like the slaves who are being taken from Africa to the same place. Except because they look like them, they told them they are going to the land of plenty. And then packed them in those boats like sardines. And they died like the slaves. But when they got there, right, they then died of the diseases there. And then they go back home. They make big posters, yeah. But you know, when you're in the colonies, well, you can just whip them, but you're doing the same thing. And then when you get them to that colony, you pit them against each other. You're using what? The media again. You see?
Happened with weapons of mass destruction.
Same thing. It's the same play over and over again. So if you're going to believe what the media says without questioning it or looking for different sources, you're in trouble, because then you become a robot. You become a tool for them, and you justify things that are unjustifiable. So a lot of people are standing behind Israel and unable to see the horror of a child being shot in the head at the breakfast table in front of his kids, of his parents, in front of the family, in the family. They don't see the horror of it because their feelings have been numbed by all the media output that came before that. And now, and then everything starts to get conflated, right? Now, if you say what Israel is doing, then you are desecrating the memory of the Holocaust. Now you are being anti-Semitic, and these people have been oppressed throughout the ages. Jews are not, they're not the most oppressed group on planet Earth. They're not. They're not the most oppressed group on planet Earth. They've had a hell of a terrible ride, but they lost 6 million people. The Native Americans lost over 125 million people. Africans have lost hundreds of millions of people. The Congo, that's losing people right now, lost over 15 million back in the day, and they're still dying, you know. But because the narrative is one tragedy is more important than another tragedy, which in itself is incredibly racist and incredibly supremacist, now you can't criticize anybody. It's like if black people were to sit in this country and say, because we went through apartheid, because we got killed by everyone, you can't criticize us. We've suffered. Leave us alone. Whatever we do is right. It can't be like that. The world can't work like that. It doesn't matter who's doing something wrong. No matter what their history, no matter what pain they come from, if what they're doing is wrong, we should all be able to say, what you're doing is wrong. And what Israel is doing is wrong. There is no way of looking at it in any other way than to say this is wrong. And the world will pay for that. You know, because every time you dig up negative pain, every time you deliver it. Now, the problem with the West is that they've done it so many times. They went to Australia and did this, almost wiped out all the Aborigines. They went to America and did this, almost wiped out all the Native Americans. Canada, the same, they did this. Everywhere, South America, they did this. And they don't realize it's 2024, 2025, that it's not the 1800s. And now they go to Palestine. They're just doing what they've always done. These Western, because Israel is being propped up by the same powers that, the French killed millions of people in Algeria. The English murdered 1 million people in Kenya in order to steal resources, steal money. Same playbook. That's what they're doing in Palestine. They want to steal that land. They want to steal what's underneath that land. They want to steal everything that's by the sea. So you are going to go around the world, create such atrocious crimes, and all of it just to steal.
Doesn't make sense.
How base can you get? How uncivilized and barbaric can you get? But what's happening in Palestine sadly fits into that same pattern. Mass murder to steal. Recently they did it in Iraq. Killed millions of people. Did it in Libya. Bombed and destroyed one of the best developed countries, not only in Africa. The Libyans were living a life equivalent, if not better, than Norwegians. That's how much Gaddafi had done for them. They walked in there with the media, they stirred the pot, made the kids think they could do better, and now that country is a cesspool of violence. For what? To steal the oil. It's like we're letting thieves, base thieves run the world. It's insane.
In SA, we've got the same problem of misinformation and disinformation. Terrible things are happening to farmers.
South Africa, just so you understand the agenda now, the agenda in the South African media is that black people are useless. They have a useless government and they are good for nothing. In fact, if we can, we will convince them that they need to find a white person to run them because they're bad. A friend of mine's 12-year-old is a great ballerina. She's 12, she's black, I forget what they call them when they are like that. They are very amazing. There's a name for it. If you're a ballerina, that's good. 2 to 3 years in a row, she's the best in the country. Juliet said, come, we've got 30% of the fees for you. I said, listen, let's get the media here to interview her and tell the country if anybody can contribute. I was told literally by one of the big media houses, a producer in one of these media houses, they said, Eric, nobody's interested in positive black stories anymore. Yeah. Mandela's time is finished. How can a black girl, 12 years old, ballerina, going to Juilliard not be interesting as a news item? But it does not fit the agenda. That means you're doing well. I mean, go and look at all your newspapers. I don't read them anymore, but I can guess that 90 to 99% of what you read about blacks in all of them is negative. We are stealing this here, we are raping that one there, all of it. I went to war with City Press back in the day because of the same thing. Every headline, every Sunday after Matata Tsedu, after his leadership there, every headline was blacks are doing this, blacks are stealing this, blacks. That's what's going on right now. And it's by design. And black people are beginning to believe it. You know, the best president in this country for blacks and whites was Jacob Zuma. Why? Because he understood that black people need to get economic freedom in order for everybody to be at peace. They vilified him. Every newspaper you get, every black, even black columnists were saying how corrupt that man is. And that stigma still stays here because nobody's thinking. Then that media way of doing things is universal in the world, in the West. I was in China, you know, and there was a summit of all African leaders there. Okay. The only country that wasn't represented there from Africa was Swaziland. You know why? Because Swaziland says it recognizes Taiwan. And China has a strict policy that Taiwan is part of China. China has a strict policy that Taiwan is part of China. And if you don't go with that, you are literally going against China. All right? Which is now being fomented somehow to become the Asian Palestine. You know, a war is going to be started there for justice, for democracy, in order to get to China, just like they're doing with Ukraine to get to Putin, to Russia. So the story I wanted to tell you is, if we were in a Western media space, the big news would have been Swaziland didn't come. Nobody cared in China. All the news outlets were talking about the beauty of all the countries that came, why they came, what they talked about, what is going to happen after this summit. That's not Western media. And then the newspapers are selling, people are buying them, and everybody says good news doesn't sell. No, you designed it that way. Because you use your news media outlets to scare people off, to keep them sort of like this so that you can manipulate them to agree to do whatever you want to do, whether it's kill babies in Palestine, bomb children in Iraq, or go and steal everything that the DRC has. People must always be scared of something. They must always be on their toes, and they must always be fighting. That's the Western media. South Africa is the most Western of all countries on this continent. So your media is absolute rubbish, all of it.
Last year, the ANC dropped from majority and then formed GNU. In the past couple of months, do you think GNU is working for South Africans?
No, that thing would never ever work. I mean, it would never ever work. That's like saying my half-rotten loaf of bread is now doing better than my whole loaf of bread. It's never going to work. I mean, how do you get? It's not going to work. It's literally saying, I had a loaf of bread. Now half of it has got worms, but it's better than the other loaf of bread that had nothing, that was fresh. That's what it is.
Do you think the ANC has failed black people?
Yeah, I mean, I was a big champion of the ANC, but I think as it happens, and as it has happened before, I think the first mistake the ANC made, and and I think I was in that area as well in terms of my thinking, was to believe that freedom, we fought for rights, you see. And this, the first time I clicked on this idea was when I was in Senegal. These people had been free for 61 years. And they were celebrating the 11th year of being allowed to have their own little business in their own country. A free Senegalese person could not have a business in Senegal. Only the French could do it. And I thought, what is going on? 61 years later, you got very poor people, tall, beautiful men chasing, walking up behind you in the street to see if they can get something from you. I was almost disgusted, you know. And then I clicked. We thought fighting was to not be called a kafir, forgetting that these people will say, don't worry, I won't call you that. But what do you want me to call you? You want me to call you Baas? You want me to flip it around? Okay, that's fine. As long as I keep the minds, as long as I keep the economy, because all of this racism, all of apartheid was an economic system. They were not busy with you. They are busy with getting the highest number of people to make them the most money for the littlest pay possible. They do it to their own people. Because you'd also think, no, you are unique as black Africans in Africa with this. No, these people start with their own people. When there were no blacks in Europe, they were doing that to their own serfs. It's their system. You always have to get a huge range of people doing the highest amount of work for the littlest money for the benefit of the fewest people. That's their system. That's why they're clashing with China, which constantly says, why are you blaming us for saying you want our cheap labor in order to make money? And we took our profit from that cheap labor for the little you were paid us for making your Nikes, making your Apples, making your everything. We took and built a country. We made sure education was close to free for everyone. We made sure we have the best medical facilities almost free for everyone. We made sure we took over 800 million people all the way up. They are close to zero in China in 40 years of nobody who is, in extreme poverty. But you took the same amount of money, even more. But America is a cesspool of junkies, of homeless people, of crumbling infrastructure, because your money does what it's always done. Take the most from the highest number of people, pay them the least possible, and benefit the smallest group of people. They do it to everybody. And that's why everyone on planet Earth who is not in the top one should unite. But no, you got the whites in South Africa thinking they're better off because they can afford discovery. You've got the black middle class thinking they're better off because they're now in the suburb. And they don't want to be touched. They don't want to fall down to where the poorest people are. And therefore, they've got this whole divide. And you think you are each other's enemies, right? It's between Soweto and Orange. That's rubbish. It's like, it's a system designed, and it's working for very few people and messing up a hell of a lot of people. And it needs to change. And in a way, Palestine is the wound that's exposing it all for the whole world to see. This is how this system is. And at its most brutal, it will ethnically cleanse a place just to steal. It's been doing it over and over and over again. So if you were any ordinary person on planet Earth, you'd say this has to be the world's last stand, that nobody ever does this again. They should be stopped. They're now making noises about going to Iran. It's an embarrassment. It's embarrassing, that there are people around who still believe this rubbish, who still want to do this rubbish, when it's so obviously wrong. When there are examples of how when you care about your country, you care about your people, you rise stronger, better, with happier people. You still want a lot of miserable people in order to feel good about yourself. The Western system is a joke.
Why do you think most countries are not supporting China in their pushback against the US?
China, you see, you can't push back if you don't have the power to do so, you know. China can push back. China just developed an engine that can travel at Mach 16. That's 16 times the speed of sound. You put that on a jet, it'll go around the world in 2 hours.
Around the world?
Yes, 2 hours. This is a fact. So if you think you're going to take on China, you know, be careful. Because they'll get to New York in minutes and blow it up. So China can push back. And China is not busy with that. Xi Jinping put it well. He did a speech the other day, and he said, China has never subjugated, colonized, or whatever, any other country. And it will not allow anybody to do that to itself. And anybody who will try that, says Xi Jinping, will meet a wall of steel formed by 1.4 billion Chinese. So he's saying, we are a nation of peace, but don't mess with us. You understand? That's the new era now. Russia is in the same space. You know? Why do you want to break us up in order to steal? To be a thief again? When there's a way of showing that you could make just as much money without stealing from people. So why are you so addicted to the misery of others? Why are you unable to enjoy yourself, even if it's at a higher level, amongst people who are enjoying themselves? Why must there be misery for you to be somebody? What kind of mentality is this? Because that's what the Western mentality is. They just create misery everywhere and then sit in their rooms. But they do it to each other. I mean, white people in Canada and America and England and France are all going on about how they have to have 3 jobs after getting a degree in order to feed a family of 4. What kind of system is that? Where you say, I'm the richest country in the world, and your graduate has a debt hanging over there. A friend of mine is in her 50s now. She just now finished paying off her debt for her varsity in America. Yes. She's over 50. So you can imagine, she finished varsity when? 24. 26 years, 27 years, she's been paying off that thing. In the richest country in the world. Go ask kids in China. They are producing over 1 million STEM graduates every year. Science, technology, engineering, and math. That's why they can deliver all these super things they're delivering now. And those kids are paying 0 to a little bit because the country can afford it. Health is the same. Food in China, beautifully cheap and fresh. That's what a rich country should do. You know? It's like, imagine that your family was rich and you kids were starving. But there's a Rolls Royce, there's a big house. That's the West. There's Lamborghini. But you have no food. When you have to go to school, you have to hustle with your friends. But your parents are rich. It doesn't make sense. And it's the most stupid thing. I don't know why the whole world doesn't look at it and say, so for me, that would be the only reason why people are not behind Palestine. They're too stupid to see it. But the world is behind China. They're not going to make a noise. They're not strong enough. China, through the Belt and Road Initiative, BTI, BRI, is it? Belt and Road Initiative.
BRI.
Yeah, I forget. Sorry, my brain just had a brain freeze. They've got over 120 countries involved there. ASEAN, those Asian countries. The ASEAN was started by America, right? America was trading 140 something billion with all those countries. China came in, was introduced, Over the last 10 years or whatever, it opened up and said, okay, free trade between us, because we're all Asian countries. In that period, America's trade with those same countries went to over 400 billion. But guess where China was? Just under 1 trillion. That tells you those countries, ever since they linked up with China, are making more money for their people than they've ever made in their whole lives. Do you think they're going to wake up now and say, yes, we're going with America?
Never.
Why would they? Because America wants to extract, just like the West does. China says, can we work together? What do you get? What do I get? As things should be. Is that a fair deal? Is it not? I've been asking my friends all the time, what kind of society puts the highest cost on the most useless things? What are you going to do with a Lamborghini? 2 people in it. What are you going to do with a $20,000 Hermes bag that can take 2 scarves in it? It's vacuous. It's empty. It's signaling. You're trying to look like something because deep down you are nothing. It's rubbish, you know. We need substance now. The world needs substance. Larry Fine, okay, who heads BlackRock, says, when we started BlackRock, we were making money in the second week. He's proud of this. And then you ask yourself, how? How do you make loads of millions of dollars after 2 weeks of opening shop? Then you realize he doesn't produce anything. It's a parasitical organization. It goes and collects money from wherever it can, friends, governments, whatever, and buys other people's stuff, buys shares in other people's stuff, and then controls them. And 99% of the time, I'm sure, controls them to do bad. So they don't produce anything. They print paper, and then they use the paper to buy into other people's things and use their position there to control those things. And 99% of the time, they control those things to a negative cause. It's a joke. And that time is done now. Nobody, it's done now. You can't run the world acting like that. It's done now. It might take 10, 20 years to lag, but it's finished. It doesn't make sense. You can't be a multimillionaire with starving kids. You are not rich then. That's America. That's England. That's Holland. That's all of these people. It's all about the front. In the background, their own people are working themselves stiff to gain just this much. Almost got a house. Oh, I've got a house, but now I'm even more stuck. I can't move. No. Anyway, so the media does that. That's how they designed it. It doesn't have to do that. That's why the alternative media now is very important, which should be about truth. It should be about freedom proper of speech, because I can't hurt you by saying you're an ugly guy. But I will hurt you by punching you because you're an ugly guy. So why censor speech?
Why do you think USA is targeting South Africa? Is it really about the narrative about farmers being killed, or it's a sinister motive behind it?
Look, as far as I'm concerned, that's all about our ICJ case. America is essentially run by Israel, in my opinion, because there's a lobby called APEC, which virtually funds all of their Congress and all of their senators, and then tell them what to do. And we've offended them by saying Israel is doing something bad in Palestine. And so what they then do is start creating a lie, which they can then use to destroy you if they can. So we need to be very careful. Because to say that farmers in South Africa are being killed is the same as weapons of mass destruction. It's just, they are creating, they're trying to, they call it manufacturing consent. You see, they're trying to get the world to buy into the fact that there's something bad happening there. We must intervene. But it's not about that. They didn't go and bomb Iraq because it had weapons of mass destruction. We know there were none. They bombed Iraq to take the oil and try and run the Middle East. Now they're talking about Iraq. I mean, now they're talking about doing that to Iran. It's the same thing. Oh, now they're using that whole thing. You are now creating uranium enriched stuff, which means you're going to have a nuclear bomb. You have a nuclear bomb. Russia has nuclear bombs. In fact, the place you won't touch have nuclear bombs. So what do you mean? Like you must be evil. Why don't you bomb yourself first? If the whole world must not have nuclear bombs, so they are manufacturing consent. There's a word for it. I don't even know the proper phrase, but they're literally, they just they want the world to say, yeah. That's why. They started the same with Gaddafi. He's not a democracy, he's a dictator, he's da. They go on and on like this. And then when they bomb him, you're all like, yeah, but that guy was not cool with his people. Let's say I'm trying to stop you from killing your people. And I'm doing it because you killed 10. How do I do that by killing 1,000 of the same people? None of it makes sense. How do I say you are bad for your people? You kill 10. In order to correct this, I will kill 1,000 of your people. Which is what they do everywhere. So what they're doing in this country, they're extremely angry that we took Israel to the ICJ. They found a little thing that they thought they could use, which is that South African farmers are being killed. Guess where their problem is? None of those farmers want to go to America.
They say no.
So now if you had 10,000, 1,000 of those farmers, when now they've got real consent, look what they're doing to people. That's why we must kill them. I don't see how it's going to work, but it's got no basis in anything they're saying. If these people say, I'm coming to your house because of this, think 4 different reasons other than the one they give you. Because they give the reason that they think the world will buy in order to do it for the reason they have, which is always evil.
You are an actor, you are a broadcaster, you are a writer. At what point in your life did you discover that you can do all this?
I don't think there's a point. It's just that I think a better way to answer it would be say, when my first book was published, The Only Black at a Dinner Party, it was a book of opinions. It was opinion pieces. And the question people asked was, what made you think anyone would listen to your opinions? Because I was not a Mandela, I was not. But it's because nobody ever told me that you can't do something. So if I felt like writing something, I wrote it. If I felt, we can act this, I acted. I never felt that I needed to be one thing or the other. I don't know how best to explain it. So there was no point at which I thought I can do all of these things. I was just doing something. Oh, this needs this, I did it. Oh, that needs that, I did that. Then it needs that. And in that process, I discovered what I can't do. I can't paint, for example, but I tried, But it's not my thing. I can't play basketball. I tried, like we went with friends and it was like, whoa, I can't do this. Maybe it's because I didn't practice long enough, but I can play soccer. I did that. I can play tennis. Not the best, but nobody ever told me you can't do something. But if there's a common denominator in what I do, it is that my area of expertise, if you like, is communication. So if you look at all the things you count, whether it's acting, writing, broadcasting. It's all communication. And the only corporate career I ever had was in advertising. I was a copywriter. So I was writing, I was communicating. So in essence, you could say I'm a communicator. That's what you could say. Yeah.
So acting, where did it start and how did it start?
Acting started in Sunday school. You know, every Christmas we used to do the nativity play, and I always acted in that. Funnily enough, I just recently remembered that because when people asked me in the past, I used to tell them that I wrote them a satirical piece, and after writing it, I didn't know who could deliver it better than me, so I delivered it. And then I became an actor. But actually it started back when I was a kid in the Presbyterian church, and I would be in the play, in the nativity play. And then it went on to when I was in primary school, I was moved to my uncle's school in Limpopo because of 76. And I used to, so Lemana, the higher primary, the high school was up on a hill. And we were down on the hill, at the bottom. But I knew that every Sunday, Sunday or Saturday, they had either debate, so there would be a debate thing where people debate the topic, and in between the speakers, people would, we call it rendering an item. You know, you do something. Don't ask me what made me do this, but I used to walk all the way up to Lemana, and I would give my name, and then I would have kept the chappies, you know, did you know? And I'd go up there and I'd read, did you know, did you, maybe 3 or 4. And then they would clap, and then I'd get out of the school, they did it in the hall, in the church hall. It's a church, but it's a hall. And I'd walk all the way back down. It's probably a good 3 to 5 kilometer walk. But in the bushes, you know, like you can't do that now. Back then, you know, it was safe, it was wonderful. Now it's peri-urban. And so those were the days, you know, that's when I sort of, in high school, funnily enough, I didn't do any of it. I was vice chairman of the debate society, so that called for some level of performance in terms of emceeing, if you like. I was a member of a quartet, so we sang student Christian movement. We were a quartet, 4 guys singing together. And then at varsity, I was more busy with writing, a lot of poetry, even though I hated poetry, like reading it, which is kind of strange. But I studied English 1 and 2. I didn't make it a major proper because I was doing the BA law degree. So that was just, I thought it would bolster my language, if you like. And the subject I liked the least was poetry. And yet I wrote a lot of poems then, and some articles or 1 or 2 for the student newspaper. So there it was more about the writing, and I was taking a lot of photographs at varsity. That's when I really got into photography. And yeah, so that resulted, of course, in my book, A Letter from Paris, which is photographs and essays. But all of it, as you can see, it's all in communication. And the professional side of acting happened the way I explained earlier. I wrote a satirical piece. I read it to a friend. He said, oh, that's good. And then somebody said, come and, you know, another friend said, come and perform it here, you know. And I went to perform it there, and it didn't work out. I ran out because they all went quiet. And I thought I'd lost the audience. Meanwhile, apparently that's when you are doing well, when an audience goes silent and they're listening to you. But I thought I'd lost them, and I ran away. But it grew like that. And then, yeah, it became my first piece, Twisted and Vile, which then went to Grahamstown Arts Festival, went to Namibia, and then I toured Holland with it. And I was an actor. You know, I got an agent. I was on television. I was like, what's going on? Very odd. And that's the least of my passions, acting. It's just, I always say to people, it's like, yeah, It's like I always describe it as being a mathematician, but you hate numbers. That's how it feels to me. It's like I know I can do it. I think I'm decent at it, but I don't like it. I think maybe it's because I might have some control issues. I like to be in control. And an actor is just a tool on set, It's like, I don't know what it is, but of all the things I've done, that's my least favorite.
Among the dramas, I think Cry the Beloved.
That would be a film, yeah. Yeah, Monofish would be a drama series, yeah. The Dangerous Ground, that's a movie that had Robert Downey Jr. Was a fish, yeah. I did Bopa, I think it had Danny Glover and Alfred Woodard, directed by Morgan Freeman. I did Wati. That's probably I still haven't seen Wati, but it was done by Suleiman Cisse. He just recently passed away. A Malian director. Fantastic. Suleiman Cisse. All I remember him saying, c'est possible, c'est possible. It's possible. Every time you have a suggestion for your character, he'd never say no. He'd say, c'est possible. I have to see Wati, man. I have to see that film. Watching that, that was of all the directors I worked with, not that there were that many, I could feel a magical director at work. I could, normally when I'm on set, I almost want to say, this would be better. You know what I mean? Like, I almost want to, because I've directed. That I love. I love directing film. The two places I've been most comfortable in are in the studio, hosting a talk show, and at the movie set, directing a movie. Those places are just, they're heaven for me. They're really, really, really nice. And but Suleiman Cisse, man, every shot he took, you said, I want to see this. I want to see how he puts it together. It was so artistic. We could feel that, the artistry of the guys. So I'm very sad that I'm sure it's somewhere. I must look for that movie and watch it. So that was Wati. And then on television, I was Archie once for about 5 episodes. I did Blasé with Robin Poole. Some people might remember her. She was either Miss South Africa or runner-up Miss South Africa, Robin Poole. We did a show together called Blasé. It was a magazine show. And I directed another one. I forget what it's called. The one that I directed, I remember. It was a TV series long ago. So I did some directing on television. I did some acting on television. But my favorite space in terms of acting, even though I didn't like it much, was film. I like film. I like acting on film more than television. So it was almost accidental, but I had practiced coming up as a kid in terms of acting, yeah.
Was the kissing accidental? That scene?
In which movie?
That movie that you kissed.
You would be talking about Dangerous Ground with Elizabeth Hurley. No, it wasn't. But first, let me say, Elizabeth Hurley is one of the nicest people I ever worked with. Honestly, she's really nice. She's a nice person. It's hard to, it sounds a bit like, I never got to know her enough to go deeper than nice, but she was a very nice person. Like really, very good energy. I even talked with her a little bit after the film. But then, of course, it wasn't like a friendly, I think what messed it up at the time is that she had just broken up with Hugh Grant. Is it Hugh Grant? Yes. And at the time, I was acting, but I was also writing for magazines. So I asked to do an interview with her, which I did do. And I think it was published in one of these magazines. Either it was called Directions or whatever it is. But I became a journalist to her at a time when she was being hounded by journalists. Hugh Grant had been caught, with Divine, whoever that prostitute was. So it created a very, I thought that could be a friend, but he's a journalist, you know what I mean? So I think that sort of didn't turn it into a friendship. But what a wonderful, wonderful person. It was written in the script that we kiss. It was my first screen kiss, and it was with Elizabeth Haley. And no, what makes you smile is what I'm about to tell you. So years later, Daryl Road said to me, he made us do it 3-4 times because he thought it's a moment for me. And I didn't know that. And by the way, I'm a very professional actor. I don't mess around. I literally, like, the only time Elizabeth Haley threw me was when we were shooting in Sun City. And they put her in this really mini skirt, and she would have to, like, sit on my thigh every time somehow, the scene works like that. She would end up on my thigh. But you can imagine, like, the way she sits, you kind of feel too much, that was tough. It was the only time I got unprofessional. When they said, okay, we'll start again, I was literally bent over, because things were happening that were not supposed to happen. But the kissing, I think it was also, it happened somewhere in Hillbrow. I can't remember where we shot the scene, but fully professional. And Daryl was laughing because he could see I'm not taking advantage of it. I'm being very professional. So he made us do it. Eventually he gave up. He just realized, this guy is not seeing what's going on.
I'm doing my level best
to say maybe, Oh, I laughed. I thought that was so funny. That was funny.
And then, Brian, you became a talk show host.
Yeah.
How did that happen on SAFM?
I literally wrote the book, my first book, The Only Black at a Dinner, but I was being interviewed on the book, on SAFM. And when we were done with the interview, I got called. They said, listen, we think you'd make a good talk show host. Would you consider it? Literally. And I said, I never thought about it, of course, And they said, well, come down. And they had a studio downstairs, somewhere at the bottom.
So after the interview, you get called?
Yeah, so I was being interviewed on my first book, The Only Black at a Dinner Party at SAFM. And when the interview finished, I was called to say, look, Sin, come downstairs, can we talk to you? Have you got time? I said, yes. They said, would you consider hosting a talk show? Because we like the way you were talking and all of that. I said, never thought of it, but yeah, worth considering. Then they called me to do a semi-audition. So we went downstairs. There's a studio somewhere in the bowels of the SABC there, somewhere.
811.
Or something like this, I can't remember. And they did a mock. They made me do a mock show. They got people calling from outside, and I had to deal with them. I remember one of them was a very racist call, which they deliberately said because they wanted to see how I would handle it. And I handled it, I suspect, very, very well. And then they said, listen, we'd like you to take this slot, 1:30 to 4:30 or something like that in the afternoon. And it was called Eric M. Live. I remember, I think it was called Eric M. And I took that slot. It was a dead slot as well. I think it had music. And that thing jumped as well in terms of listeners, and it got very, very popular. And then they fired me. Okay. To this day, I'm not quite sure what. Oh, yeah. What did they say? No, they just didn't renew the contract, which is fine. And then I got called back in when Dalimpofu became the CEO there. And he said, I think he sort of wanted me back. This time they brought me, and we called it Eric M. After Dark, because I came in from 7 to 9, I think it was. And it used to be a classical music slot. Same thing there. It had no advertising, no listeners really. Mail and Guardian started to advertise, Mercedes-Benz, and the numbers started to jump. And what happened this time was, on the Friday was literally the last day on my contract. And it was my show. It was my... So I said, I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything. So I'm not sure if I'm back on Monday, because my contract technically ends today. So if I don't come back, hey, Mbafe, thank you very much. It's been wonderful driving this slot with you. I came on Monday and I was told I'm fired because I broke the law by disclosing a clause in the contract. Because the contract says you can't disclose clause in the contract to the public.
But the contract was ending.
Whatever. So I realized it's not about that. When I look at it globally now, voices like mine are not allowed to be broadcast in this media environment, which has an agenda to dumb down blacks, to vilify blacks, to weaken blacks. So people like me, they have no space. Unfortunately, the blacks that are being used to do that don't even know they're being used to do that. So you got black gatekeepers stopping blacks from speaking the truth in the media in South Africa because 90% of it is owned by racist white people. So virtually every journalist in this country, why do you think they hounded and destroyed New Age and that Gupta media empire that they were building? Because you would never read a single negative thing, or even if something was negative, it was put in a positive way in those newspapers. It was about showing what the government is doing right, where us black people are doing okay, but that's not allowed. So they destroy that. They tell you these people are corrupt, they tell you this one is corrupt, da 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 da. If they are corrupt, why don't you allow other people to buy it so it continues? Just like Jimmy Manye tried to buy it. You know? No, it's not about that. It's not saying what the South African media is hell-bent on doing, which destroy the black child, as the youngsters say these days, you know, to make sure that every time you look yourself in the mirror, you think you are nothing. It's absolute apartheid.
What was the show all about, if you were to summarize it?
My show was exactly like my first book. I call it, that book came from a newsletter I used to do. The newsletter was called Omandingo, right? Gourmet food for the thoughts, right? But what I was doing with that newsletter, I said, now that we're past apartheid, what do we need as black people? We need to remove the leg. You know, if you are being abused, and we take you away from that space, there's still a leg. You are not with the abuser, but you still jump a little bit when somebody screams, yeah? So we were in post-apartheid South Africa with post-traumatic apartheid stress, right? So I wanted something that every black person, when they read on Monday morning, I wanted to make sure it's out. Monday morning, 9 o'clock, it was on your inbox. And you read it, you said, I'm okay. It's okay. There might still be racists in this room. I'm okay. Either because I read something that says we are okay, or I read something that's intelligent from somebody who looks like me, or I got an amazing perspective on a subject that I find interesting, I'm okay. Because you see, when you always see something good, something intelligent, something interesting, something wonderful coming from your own people, you need a dose of that all the time in order to constantly feel strong. That doesn't mean you can't be vulnerable or you can't, but you need that. So that's why white people, they're always saying good things about themselves, each other, all the media, everything. They're like this, that. Have you seen this? They're encouraging each other. They're telling each other you're okay. They're doing it for a sick reason, which is to oppress other people. But neutrally speaking, we all need that. You know, if you surround yourself with people who say, every day there's something they say that's a bit off. It's a matter of time before you start to feel like you're off. So I did that. That show was about that. It was about, I said, whatever we do on this show, if you listen, you'll feel affirmed. You'll feel like, yeah, I'm okay. Either because the guests did that, or I said something that made you feel that, or we played a song that did that. But all of it was geared to say, you are okay. And that's not okay in this country. Blacks are not supposed to be okay, tell each other they're okay, do any of that. And it's very difficult for people to see it because you read a lot of columnists saying a lot of rubbish, seen as intelligent, that says you're a mess. The ANC is not really your problem. It's who's handling the ANC that's your problem. See? And those people are the same. The people who are funding these people are the same. They made money under colonialism. They made money under apartheid. They are making even more money under the ANC. So if you look at who's benefiting the most with every regime, that's who's running your country.
There was an incident while you were at SAFM. A white listener called complaining about how you were handling the show, a listener. And then you said, if you find my show offensive, listen to Radio Pulpit. Other days you would say, there are a lot of stations that you can listen to. Why was that important?
Look, I mean, I used to have a lot of those shows, right? A lot of those callers. So sometimes you say something just to entertain yourself, but you're saying the same thing, which is change the dial. It didn't matter whether it was Radio Pulpit or not. The essence of what I was saying was change the dial. You don't have to listen to this, But we changed a lot of minds because I remember when I first started on that 8 a.m. After Dark show, in the first week, this woman called. She was mad, white woman, angry. Yeah, what happened to our, classical music, blah, blah, blah. And with her this time, I said, ma'am, I said, I wish I could answer that question for you, but I did not put myself here. I did not hire myself. So I can't answer your question as to why they've taken away your music and put me here. Please call management, and I think they'll be able to answer that one. Yeah, okay, call sharp. I sort of got a month later, the same woman calls. Same. She says, yeah, remember me? I said, and she sounds old, she says, yeah, I called you a month ago, and I was very angry at you. I was very angry. And she says, I just wanted to thank you, I've learned so much since you took over here, and it's so interesting what you're doing. Carry on, keep on, keep on. Same woman. So we changed minds because I don't believe in a racially charged way of doing things. I did one of the shows there about black inventions. And the story I got out of it was how two black kids, young, were at a dinner party in Senton. And this white guy blatantly challenged them and said, what have you people contributed to the world? And don't tell me about the pyramids. That's over 2,000 years ago and it doesn't do anything for us. What have you contributed? And I was told they both at the same time said the internet. And the guy said, what? He couldn't believe it. And then they said, yeah, Philippe Mwagwale, father of the internet, this is what he did. He made these calculations and part of the internet is based on his work on computers. And she says when they were standing outside smoking whatever, they discovered they both heard that for the first time on SAFM on my show. But I always said, I'm not telling you what black people have achieved to tell you that blacks are superior to anyone. I'm telling you what blacks have achieved to make you realize like you're part and parcel and a serious member of the human race. There's not a single member of the human race who hasn't contributed to the advancement of the human race. But these people who are all about subjugation, oppression, taking over, looking good, they're all about erasing other people's histories. So they'll try and convince you you have been useless your whole existence because their sense of importance stems from seeing other people as unimportant, as nothing. They don't realize they can stand side by side with something else and someone else who's important, and it doesn't take from their importance. That's the joke and the sickness of racism. So if you are going to be strong, you're going to say, I'm strong, but I acknowledge your strength. And it's a beautiful addition to the strength of the world. This is secure. This is confident. This is good. So that's what I did that for. So if I'm busy saying South Africa is racist, I'm not saying there are no good white people. And I'm not saying blacks must go punch whites. I'm saying, can we all fix this thing? Because it's wrong for everyone. It's a matter of time before somebody doesn't want to discuss it. So if you keep messing with people, it's a matter of time before somebody doesn't want to discuss it. They'll punch you in the nose. It's the nature of human beings. Can we make it nice for everyone? You know?
So your contract is not renewed at SAFM. 3 years later, we hear you on our FM for a few days.
Yeah, for a week. I was invited there. Kevin Carter said to me, we'll give you a week. If you can make it 50-50, male and females, I remember him saying that, yeah, I will consider having you host a show here. I did that. I think by Thursday it was 50-50. It was 49-51. And then Friday was my last show, and I never heard from them again. And anything else about why would be a speculation. Kevin never told me anything.
So you did your end of the bargain, and he did not?
Yes, you could call it that. But I still don't know his reasoning.
Was it because of the shows that you had prior to that Friday?
No. I didn't have a single show that created anything weird. Instead, they were having tons of callers. I mean, I once broke all of Reedy's records, what do they call them? Numbers in 1 week on 702. There were more callers calling in, more listeners in that week than she had done in any week of being on that radio station. So that wouldn't be that. But I'm too popular, I think, with what the status quo considers radical. Because you are not supposed to empower blacks. You are not supposed to say Zuma is doing something amazing while Zuma is in charge, even if it does exist, because the status quo says he's corrupt. It's the death of freedom of speech. I remember when 9/11 happened back in the day. All different newspapers in South Africa had different headlines. One said that was good. One said, oh, let's think about this. One said that was the worst thing that ever happened. There was some level of, wow, we are free to talk now. Have you seen anything here on Israel that is different from any newspaper? Everybody's saying exactly the same thing. Because it's all gone. Just like there's no freedom of speech in England, none in America, none in these places where fascists rule like they're liberals. They lie. South Africa is exactly there now. You know.
If you look at 702 and power, 702 has more black presenters right now. Power now, they've got more white presenters coming up. Why do you think there's that shift in these two stations?
Well, 702 is the typical get the blacks to do the work type area, in my view. Okay. If 702 has white people pushing the agenda 702 is pushing, it doesn't look right. It looks racist. So you get black people to do that. Then it doesn't. Power FM is a black station. So if white people go in there and do the agenda, it looks right because it's on a black station. The white guy must be okay. It's all part of this whole media thing where everything must look like it's working for you when it's not. You see? They're all doing the exact same thing, which is to say blacks are useless, whites are the best, and blacks must shoot themselves and bow to the whites to take over again. Because, by the way, blacks haven't taken over anything here. Because the idea of thinking you are fighting for rights makes you forget that you can't buy anything with a right. You can't protect yourself with a right. You still have to go to a court of law to get your protection. That costs money, time, and everything. You are not protected. I can slap you now and go win the case in the court if I have R1 billion in my pocket. With a video showing me, do you? Rights are useless. It's a smokescreen for you to forget about what really matters, which is your wealth, which is your land. So what have you got when you've got the right not to be called a kafir, you've got the right to marry a man if you're a man, you have a right to change your gender, all of these rights, but you can't feed your family. Which is what most South Africans are going through right now as we speak, 30 years after 1994, and no one cares because they have rights. And what is this media thing doing? It's constantly making sure you never forget your rights while they still pillage everything. 90% of this economy, if not more, the stock exchange at some point was 97% or more white. And you own this country. No, you don't. And they run your politicians. ANC is not running this country. It's a joke. And if they are, then they are worse than what I think, because then they hate their own people. We can't be in this space where hospitals are being allowed to rot when you know they serve blacks more, in order for the discoveries and all the net cares and all the white companies who have 1 or 2 blacks in their boards of directors to take it over and privatize everything. When your people have nothing, 39% unemployed, which means some 60% or more are living below the breadline in a country you run. That's embarrassing. And then you watch Traore, a young 36-year-old, go against the entire world of Westerners. They tried to bomb his entire compound. They've tried to kill him over 16 times. But he says, no, our tomato we will beneficiate. Our gold is ours. And we will use it to make sure our kids eat, they go to school, they become scientists, and you sit in this place, where 30 years down the line, we still have nothing. These people are singing in parliament that they've raised VAT a second time in less than 3 years. Who is that going to hurt while the ANC sings in parliament? Instead of being embarrassed, they pass such a thing. Who's 15.5% going to hurt? It affects tomatoes, it affects bread, it affects all the basic necessities that black people who are in poverty in this country need. That they are singing. And everybody thinks that means something. It's amazing. It's not. And I like to think they are being run by an evil force, and one day they'll wake up and rebel against it. Because it's too difficult for me to think that the ANC is actually doing that to its own people.
At national level, the ANC is in bed with the DA. At a provincial level in Gauteng, Panyaka said, no, we can form coalition with other parties, but not the DA. And at some point, she was attacked by the same ANC.
Yes.
Why?
Like I say, the only thing I can come up with is that they're being run by the same people who've been running this country for the last 350 years. All the moneyed people here are running them. It's the only thing I can think about. That's why they are all confused. They don't know where that thing is. When Cyril Ramaphosa took over, I gave up. I just thought we're done. We're done for. Yeah. Because he's their friend.
You're proven right.
He's their friend. People laughed at me because he talks like this, he does that. Blacks have never had it harder in business in this country since he took over. But blacks thriving in business in this country was called corruption when Zuma was running this place. Because Zuma tried to run it. Zuma put us in BRICS, which is a buffer against the West. If Cyril Ramaphosa could do it, he would yank us out of BRICS. I don't even know how the ICJ happened with Cyril sitting in power, because he's not working for you, in my opinion. He's got people running him, and they don't have your interest at heart. And he's destroyed that ANC. Anybody who believes in that movement right now, honestly, with this guy running it, is blind, stupid, or deaf, or all of three. It doesn't make sense to me. Take VAT up to 15 by 1.5%. What are you doing, man? Why not? If you raised rich people's tax by 1%, only the rich in this country. No, you gotta go and hit the poor people. And yet you are a movement for the poor people. It's insane. Everything they do tells you they're not for you. And the only thing I can say is they're not running it. I can't bring myself to believe that the ANC is actually doing deliberately what it's doing to black people right now. I can't believe it. It doesn't make sense.
Thank you very much. You are still watching the Media Pods. Our guest today was none other than Mr. Eric Miyeni, a writer, an actor, a broadcaster, and a lawyer. Mr. Miyeni, thank you very much for your time. We learned a lot from you about your upbringing and your thinking. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Today, we've got the legendary Mam Clara as our guest. She started as a production assistant up until she left SABC as head of SABC1. Do you think SABC1 was getting special preference compared to others where better programs were placed on SABC1?
No. SABC1 did not get any preferential treatment, even though sometimes we argued for it, that, we bring in the numbers, we bring in the money, give us more, to do more.
You were part of a team that started Generations. How did that come about?
Right now, I'm not quite sure where it's going. For Izo, the complaints went up to Parliament, but I think they were dealt with even at that level. That kind of storytelling was new at the time, and people react. Some were positive, others saw it as a negative.